Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and of course a new episode of Elden Ring, things you didn't know. Today we have some important follow-ons from some previous episodes to talk about, so let's just jump straight into it. To begin today's episode then, we follow on from a topic from the previous one. We were talking about the eclipse with Miquella, and possible reasoning as to why Melania then went after Radahn in the end. During that we talked about this weapon though, the Golden Epitaph. A sword made to commemorate the death of Godwyn the Golden. We assume that's Miquella. Oh brother, Lord brother, please die a true death. It was Casual Unitologist that had this great comment to do with the sword. So basically, before I talk about that, let's look at some incantations. We have a lightning spear incantation from the Dragon Cull. When you use that, there's a brief period where a symbol actually shows up just before the cast goes off, and that's actually representing the type of incantation that is. So let's take a bestial incantation, bestial vitality. When we pop that, we see that kind of egg symbol around the hand. With Flame Cleanse Me, we have those types, which is sort of a rune circle, and then we have Rejection, which is the circle around yourself. Each one of these represents the type of incantation that we're seeing. It's a cool, very subtle representation, but this sword actually has its own one when we use Last Rites. It has its own completely unique, not seen in any other weapon or incantation that we're aware of, its own symbol and icon when used. And what I believe that is, as well as what Casual says, is that that's probably the Halig Tree. The very first kind of incantation or ash to do with that faction, and potentially the only one, because Miquella didn't really get to do anything before he ended up cocooning himself, then being ripped out of said cocoon and put into another one by Moog. Really cool catch though, really like details like that. Thank you, Casual. Next we have one to do with the Crucible, a really interesting thought by JamJR84 in the comments about Godwyn's body and the way that it's mutating. It's a topic we've had a little bit of a chat about in certain episodes and some back and forths, and this theory I really quite like. You see, the Erd Tree wasn't always a glowing golden thing, it would seem. Long before the Golden Order came, the Elden Beast landed from the Outer God that wanted to enforce its will upon this land, and all the events that followed, there were civilizations and cults and groups that existed here before that. Many were crushed under the Golden Order or even brought into the fold. Now, one that was crushed under the Golden Order was, of course, the Crucible. The Crucible, or Crucible Knights, you probably recognize. These guys have this iconic bronze armor with the eyes and the roots and the vines that go down it, and there's a very, very clear kind of tree theme about it. Now, they have some really interesting incantations in the fact that they transform themselves. The aspect of the Crucible, say the tail, has this kind of whipping tail. Now, is that a dragon tail or something else? Aspect of the Crucible horns, again, that same kind of transformation, but the question is, what is this kind of animal? What is this kind of strange transformation where they're using multiple animal aspects to benefit them? It's this theory that it's a sort of chimeric design rather than, say, to do with a dragon, and the source of it is ultimately the Crucible and the original tree before it was turned into the Erd Tree as we know it. The description of the armor gives us a little bit of information. Holds the power of the Crucible of Life, the primordial form of the Erd Tree, strengthening aspects of those Crucible incantations. That tells us a bit of context about the Crucible and the Erd Tree and its origins, but then we have a bit more information on this incantation. This is a manifestation of the Erd Tree's primal vital energies, aspect of that primordial Crucible where all life was once blended together. So I like that idea of a chimera, a strange creature of different parts associated with different animals. And so, when we look back at Godwyn's body that is kind of molded and being manipulated by that Crucible tree, by the Erd Tree in its primordial form, could that be the source of why he is being manipulated and changed into an animal of some kind? In this case, seemingly a fishy one with scales. Obviously, we've talked about the Japanese mythology of like mermaids and people, half fish, half man. But I like this lore-relevant chimera concept that JamJR is putting down. Let me know what you think about this. Next up, a weapon highlight, which are usually my favorite, but this one I'm feeling kind of bad about. It's to do with this dagger again, which I'm going to do my best to pronounce. Apparently, I just have to keep saying this word, and it's a damn shame because I'm terrible at pronouncing it. But the Cinquedea actually had a different origin to the one we were talking about in the previous episode. There's kind of a Roman short sword that has a very similar design, and some very similar symbolic aspects of it, about intelligence and wisdom, and this being gifted to people who have that. The lore is very overlapping, so I really like that theory, and it seemed to make sense to me. However, many people in the comments were saying, well, actually, there's just an actual weapon called the Cinquedea that is the same thing. My favorite comment about this was from the Volk, talking about how this is actually a real-life short sword used by the Romans, yes. While the Parazonio is kind of the inspiration for the first Cinquedea, historians aren't exactly sure about that, which came first. Volk was explaining that it literally means the name 5 fingers and is a reference to the width of the blade and its design, and yeah, we have the 5 fingers, much like it says in the description. The design celebrates a beast 5 fingers. Why I thought this was my favorite of the many comments about this topic is because of their source, which is I'm Italian. Incredible, I can't argue with that. According to Google, the Cinquedea is a civilian short sword developed in northern Italy, enjoyed a period of popularity during the Italian Renaissance of the 15th and early 16th centuries. And indeed, this does look just like ours in Elden Ring. I felt it was very important for me to update this because they seem to have taken aspects of both of these weapons in its design as well as the lore, and now we have the complete kind of information. Next, we do have another weapon detail though, and one that I think is really cool, one that I noticed quite early in Elden Ring, but I never really talked about in this series, and as we're talking about weapons and some sort of unique aspects or real-world comparisons, this is one that I'd like to talk about. And it's obviously one of the best weapons in the entire game, the Dark Moon Greatsword, the Moonlight Greatsword. In this game, it has a very unique design. Compared to the other Moonlight Greatswords, this being technically a different one, Dark Moon, it has a unique design to it compared to the rest. Now, each time we get a new Moonlight, you can see there are differences. Bloodborne, my favorite one, was the transforming one. This one's pretty standout though, because ultimately it's ice, which is a new kind of status for the series, and not exactly a majorly popular one in terms of the amount of weapons that even have the status. Either way, our new version, Dark Moon, is an ice greatsword, and you can see that really reflected in the design of the weapon if you stop to look at it, and I do think it's really cool. You can see that there's kind of like a spine of a tree going up, a frost spine that goes up and through the sword. Also, if we zoom in, you can actually see sort of ice particles, spikes coming off even the crossguard. It doesn't seem like the most comfortable thing to hold, especially without gloves. When we power it up, it gets that cool visual flare and unlocks the new moveset, and then we can actually take a look at it in this glow, which does look really cool, enhancing those icy features of the blade just a little bit. But you'll never really notice this if you don't stop and actually push yourself against a wall and look at it. It's a very subtle but really nice design. The reason that I'm talking about this though is because Isaac Browning talked about it and had a comment to do with the chest piece, the Black Knife Assassins. Apparently, by wearing this chest piece, we can even get a better look at what's inside the sword, but to be honest with you, from my own testing and looking at it, I don't think it actually affects it anyway. I can't see any change anyway, and that also goes for whether it's powered up and glowing or not. I see no change in the weapons, so yeah. However, this gave me a good excuse to take a look at the blade and talk about this really unique design and just appreciate it. Isaac has so many great comments to talk about in future episodes though, so I'm sure we'll be going through those. Our next thing is going to be a short and sweet one, a quick one. We're here at the Mikola Hallig tree, where we face Loretta in True when she's not a spectral ghost summoned by Ranni, but the real deal. This is her armor set, which is rarely seen. I think it's quite a unique design, but I guess a lot of people aren't into it. And as we were talking about altering equipment, revealing new details and lore, and it generally being an interesting topic, someone had a follow-up that there is one specific piece that for some reason, when you alter it, which would normally lower all the stats, it actually gains poise. As you can see, it's gaining 4 poise even though we're taking something off of it. That doesn't really make much sense because, you know, you're usually offered more protection by having extra like buffer, and even if it is cloth, something to stop a blade or some kind of protection. But as soon as we take away the cape, we get an extra 4 poise for some reason. It does change the look of it. It's quite interesting. Still quite a peculiar chess piece. And it is one of those examples that really does change the lore. When it does have the cape, it talks about that being an emblem of her knightly pride. But when you take it away, it reveals the truth. How she was once a Carian knight and was trying to find a safe haven for the Albinaurics and that whole thing. So why would something like this gain poise? It doesn't really make much sense to me. Justin Harris was the one that talked about this and brought this to my attention, though thank you. But there you have it, a short and sweet episode today. Some important follow-ons from previous things, including the correction on that. I've got to say it again, don't I? Cinquedea, you guys have really got to help me. If you have any more interesting details that would fit in a series like this that we haven't discussed in the series so far, maybe some more interesting weapon details and thoughts and information, or perhaps even armor set ones, then drop it in the comments. And of course, if I have a look at it, I'll give you a shout out. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.